Hello, my name is Nathan Stooke, and I'm the CEO of Wisper. And we decided to put together some sessions to try to help as many people as we could. We know these are unprecedented times. We have Wisper University, where we like to teach our own employees and other WISPs how to be a WISP and do the best we can. And we thought we would put together a series of videos to kind of help you, where a lot of us are stuck in the house. I hope that most of you out there are busy connecting customers and working on keeping your customers connected during these interesting times. So I'm going to kind of kick off our series with talk about leadership and does it really matter? And these are going to be available on YouTube, and we're streaming these live. So we'll kind of see how this goes. This is kind of my first foray into doing this. So today we're going to talk about leadership, and I thought maybe I'd start with a little bit of a funny commercial, or not commercial, but a cartoon, and it's know your style. And these are 8 different types. I won't read them all, but I'm definitely the visionary, the follow me. Oh wait, a shiny new thing. I've got 20 ideas a day, and probably 1 to none of them are good ideas. So I'm sure you've all worked for, or if you're truly honest with yourself, you would agree that you're one of these type of leaders. I thought the parrot was kind of a funny, is that our strategy is whoever I talk to last, right? So they just repeat whoever they talk to, and you guys know who the cheerleaders are and the drill sergeants and everything. So I thought this was just kind of a funny way to frame up leadership, and that there's lots of different types of leadership, and we're gonna cover kind of a little bit about what I think leadership is, and then try to give you guys some great examples of how we can improve our leadership. So like I said, my name is Nathan Stooke, and I'm the CEO of Wisper. But I get the question a lot is, how did I get here? And I'm not going to go into my 10-minute intro that I have with a whole bunch of slides and everything, but I am going to touch a little bit on my leadership journey. For me, leadership started very early on. I got my Eagle Scout when I was 12. Most Eagle Scouts get it when they're 18. That's your deadline as to when you can get it. I got it when I was 12. So I was one of the higher ranking Boy Scouts in my troop. So I ended up running a lot of the troop functions and being a leader to people who were quite a bit older than me. But I loved the Boy Scouts. I loved being an Eagle Scout. I was also valedictorian of my high school. From there, I went on and was a leader on the U.S. national swim team. I was able to qualify for the U.S. national swim team and swim there. Captain of the open water team. I've been on international trips for the U.S. Masters, and then my wife and I also started a swim team, and I'm president of the board of that. So throughout my kind of career and history, I've never sought out leadership roles, but I tend to always kind of end up there, and it's something that's as looking back, I look at it very fondly, and I look at the positive impact that I've tried to leave on the organizations that I led. For Wisper, we started back in 2003. I like to say out of my garage, but honestly, it wasn't out of my garage. It was out of an 86 Honda Accord with a fold-up ladder out of the back. We had 0 employees, 1 tower, 0 offices, 6 customers, and a negative $33,000 revenue, because I convinced my wife it was a good idea to put $36,000 across 3 of our credit cards. Because back in 2003, everybody needs internet. One of the problems with being a visionary leader is you tend to be ahead of the curve. And it really wasn't until about 2007 that we started seeing just massive amount of demand. So we were a little bit ahead, but we've now since grown to about 110, maybe even 120 every couple days. It increases, and this is our team from about a year ago, and we're just excited, growing and learning as we go. And it's really neat to be able to see how my leadership has changed over the time, and how that journey, it's not a destination, it's a journey. But I also want you to understand that, you define success. If you're a small business or a small WISP and you're happy with having the customer base you have and the smaller employees, that's perfectly great. I have nothing wrong with that. I think that's wonderful. You've chosen to have your business the way it is. And I don't ever look down on that. In fact, I like to learn a lot. If I love talking to a WISP owner that has like 300 to 400 customers, and they're like, "Listen, I figured out how to save $100 per tower when I deploy." And I'm like, "Wow, that's awesome because we have like almost 500 towers. That's going to be amazing. That'll save us a ton of money on how we do it." So I don't ever want anybody to ever think that my aspirations of becoming a large with WISP. I look down on them. You define success. I was able to swim, and I got to the top of the U.S. national team in open water. I went internationally, and the highest I ever ranked at the Pan Pacific Championships was third, and that was great. That was where I wanted to be, but that wasn't. I didn't let outside forces define my success. My success was swimming the best of my ability and doing the best I could. So remember, there will always be somebody out there that has a bigger house or more cars or more something, but you define your success, and you'll be just fine. So let's kind of look now at this topic of leadership, and does leadership really matter? And back in 2007, 2008, I woke up one day and said, "Oh crap, I own a real business, right?" I had 17 employees. That means I had 17 families relying on me to make great decisions. I had 17 people that were relying on me to move the company in the right direction. We had, outside forces that I had no control over, internal forces that I had control over. And I realized that I had the American dream. I had a real business. I had 2 million in revenue, and it was great. But I was the bottleneck of the company. I had reached as John Maxwell puts, my lid. I had grown to where I could be, and I wanted to set out to be the leader that deserved to be the CEO, not the leader that is the CEO just because I own the company. And from there, that's when I started reading lots of books. So I have dyslexia, and I spell at a third grade level and read at a six. So I listen to my books, and I can listen to my books at 6 times or 3 times speed. So that allows me to go through and listen to these books. So I started listening to one book a week and I would come into my leadership team. I'm like, "All right, we're going to do this," and they're like, "Okay, great." And then I would come back to them the next week and say, "All right, we're going to do this," and they're like, "Okay, great." And then the third week I'd come back and say, "All right, we're going to do this." Remember, visionary, 20 ideas in a day. And they're like, "Okay, but we haven't even finished week one." It's like, "Well, hurry up. We got to catch up." And then they finally stopped me and they said, "Well, what are we going to do next week?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I haven't read that book." And one of my friends turned me on to Traction by Gino Wickman. And he had read all the same books I had, cherry picked all the same things, except he was 20 years ahead of me. So he knew the rest of the story. And he was able to put it into a book and a framework, and that's the EOS, which is Entrepreneur's Operating System. And we've been able to implement that. And through my leadership journey, that gave me the confidence to know that, hey, I'm not just making this stuff up as I go. I'm following a process. We implemented it kind of with our flavor, but we're doing this process. So I would highly encourage everybody to read the Traction book and really work with your EOS and what that can do for your business. And what did it do for our business? Well, you can see back in 2008, 2007 is when I started reading books, and you can see our revenue growth from here. And it goes on. If I update it into 2020, it would be even up even more. And I truly believe that that's from our leadership, and then also being able to follow that EOS model. And in leadership, it's hard work, right? It's really really hard to know when to be the right leader, what kind of leader you need to be. Others don't always see the value in your work. I think one of the things that I find so funny is that in our company we have a couple Monday morning quarterbacks. Well, I would have done it this way, and I would have done it that way, and I would have done this. And one time I just said, "Fine, you go do it. You're the leader now. You said you would be the one that would be able to run it better than somebody else was running that department. You go run it." And it's amazing how much your thinking shifts when the decisions make a difference, right? So when you're a Monday morning back quarterback, it's easy to poke holes in what people say and what they do, and they would have come out differently. But the second you flip the tide and you say, "Listen, your decisions matter, and your decisions are going to make a lasting impact," that changes. Even the Monday morning quarterbacks tend to freeze up and have a hard time with that. So I think it's something that it's easily talked about and said we need good leadership, but very hard to actually put down what is good leadership. And I'm going to try to give you some examples today of what I think good leadership is, and where maybe it'll help you when you're in a situation. Um, and kind of the question is it worth it? Right? I mean, some people say, well, I am who I am, and I have leadership skills, but I don't know that I'm going to get any better or need to get any better. Or is leadership really something that is set you apart? And this next slide, I have this up here. So the blue is the average WISP. This is taken across the US as best as I can determine. A little bit over 1,500 customers, a little over 1 million in revenue. And the red is Wisper. And I'm not showing this slide to say, oh my goodness, we're so much better. I had the same opportunities that other WISP owners did. I had the same access to great customers. In some areas, I had really, really worse situations because I either had a cable company that was already building out in a lot of areas, a fiber company, lots of trees. There's other areas of the U.S. that are flat with no trees, with tall mountains that overlook, a really flat area. So I share this not to say that, hey, Wisper is better than everybody, but that we had the same opportunities and we've really, really grown. And I think it's because of our leadership. I don't think it's because we've got some special secret sauce that we're doing something different than everybody else. It's truly down to my leadership and our leadership team leadership, and each one of our individual employees, their leadership that they show in their roles. And I want to try to share that today and some of the things that I've learned. So now let's kind of switch the gears a little bit and let's ask, are you a leader? Do others follow you? And of course, this is the picture when you think of as a leader. These baby chicks follow their mom, not because they think they should or have to, but because that's all they know, right? That's just what they should do. So do people follow you? That's a good sign that you're a leader. Doesn't mean you're a good or bad leader. It just means that you are actually a leader. The next one is, do you influence others? John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And when he talks about that, that's, the outcome of leadership is you've influenced people. And those come to mind, maybe some video bloggers that influence people. You have your normal bloggers that influence people as well. And those people, whether they want to be a leader or not, are definitely influencing people. The other one is, do other people look up to you or role model? Charles Barkley is the one, I think it was back in 1993. He's the one that kind of some controversy when he said, I'm not a role model, I'm a basketball player. And this is kind of a case where it's not up to you as to whether you're going to be a role model. What's up to you is whether you're going to be a good role model or a bad role model. You don't get to decide when you're a role model for somebody. And that role model and what people look up to comes with your status, but it also comes with your actions and what you do. And that's something that we oftentimes overlook and people try to play down the fact that they're a role model for people. So I think when we look at those three things, hopefully you answered yes to most of those. And really, when it comes down to it, it's inevitable that you will have a chance to be a leader every day. It is unlikely, although in the social distancing, right, that we're all stuck in our houses or out and about where we can't be around people. Maybe there's less chance to be a leader, but I would say there's actually even more, and you have to be more intentional about it. And I would say that being a leader, your chance to be a leader is kind of like death and taxes. They say that those are the only things that are guaranteed in life, is that you'll pay taxes and you'll die. I think the other thing is that you'll have a chance to be a leader every day of your life. So now let's look at a little bit as to what is leadership. When I Google what is leadership, this is what comes up. All of these words, patience and confidence and open-mindedness, and there's all kinds of words that kind of conjure up in our mind what leadership is. And I think all these words are really good. I think they embody what we kind of think of when you think about leadership. Some of these words I'm a little concerned about. Personableness, I'm not sure that's even a word. My spell checker says I've spelled it wrong. The other one is wonkiness. I'm pretty sure that describes me when I play basketball. That's why I became a really good swimmer, is because I could not play basketball. But really, in my mind, there's one word that sums up being a leader. and what leadership is. And it's none of these on the page. It's a choice. Leadership is a choice, and it's a choice you have to make on a regular basis. And it's something that we already talked about how it's hard, and how sometimes it's hard to make the right choice. And what do those look like? Leadership is a choice, and you have an opportunity to be a leader every day, but you have to choose to be that leader. And that's something I think that's very important. I love John Maxwell and what he says about the 5 levels of leadership, and his 360-degree leader books. Those are the two best books I've ever read on leadership, to really break down what a leader is, right? Because if you walked into a company and said, "Hey, who's your best leader here?" They would say, "Oh, John is our best leader." Okay, why is he our best leader? Well, I mean, he's just a good leader. Well, that doesn't help us. And I think John Maxwell's books they do a really good job of describing what a leader is and what the different steps of being a leader, especially his 5 levels of leadership, what each stage of being a leader is. And I think he does a great job. But where I think it kind of missed the mark is, I think influence is the outcome of leadership. So if you have good leadership, you will influence. But first, before you can even do that, you had to make a choice. You had to make a choice to be that leader. You don't get to be a leader without making that choice. And I want to kind of expand on that a little bit, because that's kind of the whole crux of the talk today, is that you have to choose to be that leader. And choosing to be that leader, it's an everyday occurrence. A thing I commonly say to my managers is, it's okay if you don't choose to be a leader every day, but don't get mad when I remove you from being a leader because you've chosen not to be one. So in that, it means that you have to come to work ready. You have to be ready to be a leader and make those choices. Sure, you can have a bad day, and sure, things cannot go very well. But that's a choice you make. What attitude do you come to the office with? What attitude do you interact with your employees with? What kind of leader do you want to be? That's a choice. That's something that you have to choose, and it's a daily choice that you have to make. I think the other thing is kind of, it's in every situation as well, big or small. And sometimes we think, oh, well, the big ones are what matters. That's the one that we get to, those are the easy ones. They're the decisions we get to make, and everybody sees us making them. But I think it's also in the small things. And I'm going to pick on my wife a little bit because she's not here. But this was probably about 5 to 7 years ago. My oldest was, I think it was about 10. That means my youngest was about 4. And I was driving them to swim practice or something. And this guy cut me off. And I mean, like, cut me off, like I had to slam on my brakes or I would have hit him. And I slammed on my brakes, and then I kept driving, and I didn't say anything. And my middle child, he pipes up and goes, "Well, Dad, aren't you going to call him an idiot like Mom does?" And I'm like, "Oh, haha, I now know what my wife says in the car with my kids." And then I thought, well, wait a minute, this is a teachable moment. So I told the kids that it doesn't matter. He cut me off, yes. And yes, if he had actually hit me, I would have had to deal with it, and I would have been, it's a waste of time, and I can't believe he didn't see me. But he didn't actually hit me. I was able to avert it. And who knows, maybe he was rushing to the hospital because his wife or kids were in serious accident, and he had to get there to see them. Maybe he didn't even know that he cut me off. And me getting all upset about it, and me calling him an idiot, and my blood pressure going up, and me saying all these things, it didn't affect the outcome at all. What's done was done, and he went all about his life not even knowing he had affected us, and I didn't let it affect me. And that was something that was very important to me. That was a small thing. I could have laughed it off with the kids. I could have called him an idiot as well. But I chose to take the time to explain to them my thinking. And it was a very small thing, but why it didn't get to me that he cut me off, and how I responded to it. So I think it's in the big and the little things that we really have to do it. And if you do it well in the small things, it makes it easier to do in the big things. Another one, I love this one, is when no one's looking, right? It amazes me beyond belief when you hear about the politicians or some CEO of a company, that some scandal comes out and you find out that they were doing something they shouldn't be doing. And it's like, how did you think nobody was going to find out about this, especially with social media now and everything going on? I like to say that it takes years to build respect, but it's seconds to lose it. And I think that's very important for us all to think about, is that you can't assume that when no one is looking, if you're not a good leader when no one's looking, that it won't get out that, hey, you made some bad decisions. And I'm not talking bad decisions like, do we do this or do we not do this and it turned out to be bad. I'm talking some more of those moral ones. It always surprises me that people think that that'll never be found out, or nobody would ever know what I was doing, because if it does come out, then yes, that's your prerogative to do it. But then it's also our prerogative to choose whether we want to follow you or not, and if you want to be the leader that we have. So I think we have to keep in mind that when no one is looking is probably the time it's the most important to be a good, make good decisions and stand up, lead, stand behind your name and what you stand for. The last one I'll kind of share with you is when everyone is going the other direction. And I have an example of this in John Maxwell's book, Five Levels of Leaders. It really opened my eyes to, in some groups, I'm chairman of the board of WISPA, and I enjoy that role. But I'm in a little bit different role there than being the president of the swim team that my wife and I started, or even being just a committee member of the Boy Scouts troop that my boys were on. And at the Boy Scout troop, I was definitely just a committee member. I did not have an officer's position, and I was just there to observe and help give my input. And we had a new parent who was on the board, and he said, "Hey, I'm having a hard time understanding our calendar." We had a calendar of all these events, and he couldn't understand when the parent was responsible for registering the child, or if the troop was going to be responsible. And we talked about it, and I wish I could say that I came up with this solution, the second he asked the question. But we talked about it for a good 15 minutes of what is the problem? Could we color code the calendar? Could we do this? Could we do something else? And we came down and we were about ready to vote. And the vote was going to be to have the Scoutmaster type up yet one more email that no one was going to read, and send it out to tell the parents which ones they were responsible for, which ones they weren't responsible for. And that was the consensus. That was, everybody was like, hey, that's what we're going to do. And literally right as the leader was asking for a vote, I said, well, hold on a second. Can I ask one question? And I wish I would have come up with the idea for earlier in the discussion, but I didn't. And my question was, does anybody else around the table have a hard time understanding the calendar? And the answer was no. So our one new parent had a hard time understanding the calendar. So the problem was not that they didn't understand the calendar, that our calendar was confusing, is that we hadn't done the proper training with that new parent. And if that one new parent had a problem, probably a lot of our other new parents had the problem. So then we focused it back around, and I said, okay, well, if the problem is not knowing how to understand the calendar, what training can we do? And then ultimately we came up with a solution we call it OYO, on your own. So we would, in front of every single place where the parent was responsible, it was on their own to figure it out, we put OYO and then the name of whatever the event was. It was such a simple change. It took no time at all to do that. But I was willing to go against the grain when we had already decided on what we were doing, and I didn't want to belabor the discussion any longer. But it actually turned out to be a really, really good solution that everybody thought was great. And to this day, many, many years later, they're still doing something like that. So it's interesting that you have to be willing to go against the grain. And there's times when that's easy, times when it's hard. If I had listened to everyone, there would have been no way I would have started Wisper, right? How can you compete against the big cable companies? How can you compete against the phone companies? How could you provide service in the rural markets with wireless, which back in 2003 was barely developed? All those things I would have said, oh, you're right, I probably shouldn't do this. There's no way we're going to be able to do this. But I went against the grain. I went my own direction and said, no, I see where this is going, and this is something that I believe in. So I think being willing to go the other direction in the right amount of time and in the right times is very, very important. And those are some of the things that I've seen throughout my career, my journey as a leader, that you have to think about constantly. You have to think about them. It helps you make a decision, right? It's a lot easier if you kind of have it forefront to think about, am I making the right decision here where it's a small choice or a big choice? Am I making the right decision when no one is looking? And those are things that if we keep those and use those kind of as our litmus test as we're making decisions during the day and over time, then you should be able to show a pattern of the best choice you can make as a leader. And I want to kind of conclude today a little bit, just given our current situation we're in with the world, is leadership in today's new normal. What does that mean? And I've had the privilege to be the the chairman of the board of WISPA when we had to cancel a show because we couldn't meet. They wouldn't let the city wouldn't let us meet there. We had to cancel a 1,000 member show. To the swim team, where my wife and kids were actually already at a championship swim meet, ready to swim, and they had to cancel that and come home early. To Whisper, what do we do for our installers? How do we still provide the service we need to as a critical infrastructure? But what do we do? Do they go into their houses? Do they not? And I've seen this virus across the whole spectrum, from small organizations to big organizations. And I I'd have to say that, my style is I plant the seed. So I love leading by, hey, has anybody seen this as a problem? No, 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 this isn't a problem. Oh, okay, okay. And then the next week we talk about something, and I'm kind of planting seeds and kind of guiding. As a visionary, I tend to be always thinking about, 4 or 5 years down the road, which sometimes gets me in trouble. That's why I need a great leadership team to help me, bring it back to where we are today. But I tend to always be looking down there. So my style has always been more of a plant the seed, foster the seed, mature the seed, and then if it's your idea, I have no ego in the hunt. I don't mind. That's great. But I noticed that after several of my meetings that I've had on the coronavirus and what should we do and how should we do that, I had changed my leadership style a little bit, and I was more dictatorial, more like, hey, we have to make a decision, we have to make one now. We have to. What's our outcome? What are we going to do? I know there's a lot of unknowns, and I didn't even realize it until I started reflecting that I firmly believe that people can change, and I don't believe that this is a permanent change for me, but it was something that was needed. It was a leadership skill that was needed. We had to make decisions fast. We had to make them um, with very little information. And while lots of people were gripped with fear and nobody knew exactly what was going on, we had lack of information. We had changed information, right? I mean, literally, you could have one piece of information in the morning, and by the afternoon, it would be a different piece of information, and you had to change what you were doing and how you were doing it. And I just want to give all the rest of you leaders out there confidence to know that, especially in today's society where we are, nobody has all the information they need to make good decisions. Nobody has all the time they need to think about it and to process it. The leaders we need now are people who can make a decisive decision, work to the best they can with the information they have. And it is okay to change your decision, right? It's okay to say, well, we were going to do that, but now new information has come out that is big enough or different enough for us to be able to say, no, we need to pivot or we need to change what we're doing. And like I said earlier, being a leader is not easy, and you will catch flack for making decisions that people don't agree with. But what you want to be able to do is show a proven track record as to what are your core beliefs and who are you as a person. And as long you should know that you are making good decisions, the best decisions you can, and be willing to say, "Hey, I was wrong. I had wrong piece of information, and I'm willing to now change because new information came about or what we need to do." And I think this world that we're in right now, this kind of new normal, hopefully we go back to our old normal here relatively soon. But this new normal is something that we need strong leaders, and we need people willing to take up that charge. And we don't have weeks to talk about it. I hope we don't have too many knee-jerk reactions to what's going on with the virus. There are very serious things we have to deal with, but there are very, very, very thought out ways that we can do it. We just don't have 2 weeks to figure it out, right? You might have a couple hours, and it's overwhelming at times. But I just wanted to give everybody, pause and say, congratulations, good job on leading your teams, leading your families, leading. And if you felt like you didn't do as good of a job, figure out what you can do the next time you have to make decisions, and the next ones, and hopefully they won't be as big as how to deal with this coronavirus. But at the same time, we learn from our mistakes. We learn how do we do things better. And remember, leadership is hard, but hopefully today what I've kind of shared with you is something that'll help you frame up in your mind when you come to a situation. It'll be different than any of the situations I've been in, but maybe you can say, "Oh yeah, Nathan was talking about how this, the small things or something else that we need to do," and hopefully that'll help you become a better leader. And I look forward to sharing a lot of these different topics with you. And so I'm going to leave you with this quote. I love this quote. As you know, I have dyslexia, so I listen to my books, but you'll be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And I think that's so vital. We have to get out there. And obviously, right now with social distancing, it's a little hard to get out and just meet people. But the books you read, hopefully, with no commute, you'll have time to read more books and improve yourself. And these are some of the books that I would highly recommend. These are all the ones I picked out of my book list, which we'll post our book list at the bottom of this video. But these are the ones I picked out for actual leadership that kind of look at what leadership is, give great examples of leadership. I've read all these books multiple times, and I think they're great. And my book list that I have is broken down into by section. So I have being an entrepreneur and being a leader and communication and marketing. So that way, if you're interested in any one of the books for a specific topic, you can go to those and read them. And I'd love to kind of start the conversation about leadership and what we need. And I'm so happy that you tuned in, and look forward to doing a lot more of these. And hopefully we helped you out. Hopefully we gave you some feel good of, hey, we know we don't all have the right answers or the answers, and we're out here trying to do the best we can. And I just encourage all of you to make that choice to be a leader. And it is a choice. It is intentional. You have to make that choice. And then once you do that, then just do the best you can and learn as much as you can. So with that, I'd like to thank you for tuning in.